Hey, this is 6 Bolt Von Doom's lab. This video is going to be Hook of the Reaper release version 1.2.0. So it's going to be kind of a big one, I guess, with the send-in light gun. I know a lot of people been waiting for that. So let's get into it. So bugs. So the alien bug finally been closed, so don't have to go through that. Next one is if the TCP connection from the game or demolish shooter cuts out, then it wasn't doing the close command, which should set your light gun back to normal control and all that. So I fixed that for in version 1.2.0. It's mostly for House of the Dead 2 remake because it just cuts out. And that's what I told Team Encoder. I thought it was going to do that command, but it wasn't in there. So now I just fixed it to make sure now it checks to make sure it got the closing out command. If it didn't, it will do it. Then it will close the connection if you have it set up that way. So that one wasn't really too bad. So it was easy fix. Okay, next bug is for TCP socket connections are pretty slow. So this is kind of a weird one now that I was doing more because usually when I just connect to the game and all that, I have plenty of time, so it wasn't that much of a worry. But now that I'm connecting to TCP socket to the send-in stuff, it was taking a long time. So I had different setups and I'm like, wow. And so I finally tried to figure out why this was causing it, and it actually turned out to be a Windows and Qt thing. So when you do a TCP server, I just had this was just local host, then the port number. But the problem with that is Windows will try to resolve the host name in the IP version 4 and IP version 6. So it has to wait until it resolves both of them. So it has to wait until IP6, times out. Then it finally does what the IP4 is. So then I found out there's two ways around it. You can use this long thing just to say, hey, special address localhost, or you can make it, a static to the local host. And that's kind of what I did. I went with the second one. Of course, the only problem is that somebody did change around localhost and their host page. That might screw up, but I don't think anybody has done that or knows how to do that. So, but yeah, I set that to that, and now it's connecting a lot faster. So, and also should now connect to like MAME and Demolish Shooter faster too, because I changed both of them. So that should be fixed in the next release. Then the next bug, I didn't actually file a bug. Here, I'll bring this up. It was for one using slow mode and using the ammo value recoil method. You can actually miss a shot from 1 to 0. And the reason because of that, I have a check in there. If it's 0, then the last value is higher than 1. It will ignore it just because of some of the stuff that happens with cutscenes and some other stuff. It's kind of like a safety thing. So if it was using just the even numbers, it could miss it. If it was just the odd numbers, it wouldn't be that problem. So about 50% of the time, it could miss that shot. So how I fixed it is actually another thing I had to do with send-in sometimes too, is in slow mode for when you're using ammo value, instead of just doing the either, doing this, do one, then skip one, then do one. Now I'm just doing the even shots now. So I'm just ignoring the odd number of bullets and just focusing on the even number of bullets. But when you do that, of course, it's going to come down to 2, right? So, so now I actually so when you put it in slow mode, it will tell the light gun side, say, hey, this is in slow mode now. And then they'll change the ammo check from 1 to 2. So now it's all kind of hooked in together. So it all knows what it's doing now. So there's the hooker engine, then there's the light gun kind of side. So now they're all kind of synced up with the slow mode. So now this shouldn't be a problem. Now, so it should be fixed in version 1.2.0. So if you're using slow mode with ammo value, you shouldn't be missing that shot anymore. But those are the bugs. So let's move on to the enhancements. So this is kind of a long one. I put in a lot of stuff. So so the first one, probably most people know, I told people about, I redesigned and coded how the hooker engine connects to light guns. So before the send-in, I just had serial port and USB HID. So it's pretty easy to say, hey, are you a serial port, or if not, you must be USB HID. So it wasn't that bad. But now I add a TCP in, then I'll be adding in Bluetooth LE later. So now that's getting kind of big. So I don't want to, every time send out data, have this if else statement, if your serial port, do this, if else USB HID, if else TCP, if else Bluetooth LE. I don't want to have all this big if else statements every time sending out data. So what I did is I redesigned it to make it a direct connect. So now when it loads up the default LG, it'll know what light gun is and how what output connection it is. Then it will connect the output stuff, open, close, and write directly to the functions for the output connection. So it'll be connected directly to serial port or USB HID or TCP. So there's no more if else statements anymore. Everything's directly connected, which is really good. So it means lower latency for all, because now there's no more checking to make sure. So which came up pretty nice. So and actually, this kind of goes into the second one. So I actually redesigned and coded the ammo value command in the light gun side. So when hooker engine asks the light guns, hey, I need this ammo value command from a certain light gun. And the problem was now Sinden likes to use the ammo value too. So now I had the Reaper, then Sinden, then everybody else. So it was kind of like getting pretty big with if else. Like if you're a Reaper, if else, a Sinden, if else, else do this. And it was kind of getting really big. So I kind of took the same kind of direct connection things from the serial port USB or TCP to now ammo value will when you load in the light gun, it will directly connect, is it a normal ammo value, is the ammo value Reaper, or ammo value Sinden. So then you don't have to go through all that other code or try to skip it all the time to try to make latency less to be, be the fastest it can. So that turned out really well. So it was working really good. And that's directly connected based on the light gun, like I said. And I plan probably the next version I'll plan it to do with display ammo, display life, and display other, because that has open fire or the alien light gun, which is very kind of different. So I always have to say if you're alien light gun or open fire kind of thing, then it chops it up very differently. So that's I'll plan to do this kind of the same thing as I did up here, which make it go a lot faster. Well, not that much faster. If you do if else, it's not really gonna speed it too much, but I'm trying to get the best I can out of it. Okay, so on the next one is I kind of cracked open the commands, which I didn't really want to do, but I kind of did because with new games coming in and kind of what happened with House of the Dead 2 Remake, I needed 3 signals, but if I made changes, I could get it down to 2 signals. And I was like, well, maybe I should put that in. And that's what most of this is just that. I put in a command called life value and a command called death value. Okay, well, what's kind of the difference? Well, it's kind of easy when you think about it. Life value can do damage and death. So it will check your life value, and if your life value goes down, hey, damage happened. And of course, when your life goes down to 0, hey, death happened, kind of thing. Then death value doesn't do damage because a lot of games have damage. So I didn't need to do the damage. I just needed to do death because I saw Sinden was doing stuff with like when death happens, and I was like, I didn't have anything for death. So now I have that in there. So that actually I added in a command so when the player dies for all the light guns now. So I actually had to, I think, update over like 100 default LG game files. So it wasn't too fun, but I got it all done and updated. Then all the new game files will be included too. Well, yeah, so, well, if you get the main one, you get all the game files. And if you get the change files, it'll just be all the change files from the last version. So they'll all be in there too. But that will, add in the death value command to those game files. So you can actually, so when your player dies, they actually do something now. So now, like I said, now with life value, so if I just had life value and ammo value, I just only need 2 output signals now, which is just ammo and life. And that can do recoil, reload, damage, death, and display. So those 2 can do all that stuff, which would be nice. So you only need really 2 signals. And also I have to do some stuff too with cuts when you're skipping the cut scenes and all that, because sometimes the life and ammo will skip around too. So I had to do some special things to try to get around all that. Okay. Then the last 2 commands, since I cracked open the commands, I knew one person wanted there's like for reload, you can do the left corner, shoot the left corner, and I didn't put disabled in, off-screen disabled, which I think the left corner only one uses, and that's the gun for IR, and off-screen disabled is in 2 light guns, I think Blamcom and gun for IR, so since a person asked and I opened, and the reason I didn't want to put it in because that was right after version 1.1.5 when I locked everything down. But now that I opened it up again to put the life value and death value, I was like, okay, these are pretty simple. I can get these in like 20-30 minutes, and that's what I did. I just put them in. So now all the off-screen options are all there. So don't ever have to go back and do anything anymore with it. So, but those are the 4 commands: the life value, death value, off-screen left corner, and off-screen disabled. Okay. So the next enhancement is actually I put in a option for the default LG. So I talked about a little bit about this in the last release. So options are kind of cool where we can do stuff or enable stuff in the default LG to do stuff in Hook of the Reaper. So one of the problems we are having when you do use ammo value in a game where you switch weapons, like Time Crisis 5 or House of the Dead, Scarlet Dawn. And I'm not talking like special weapons, because like in Jurassic Park you get like a special weapon, but you can't switch that weapon, right? Once you get that special weapon, you use it until it runs out, then you go back to your normal weapon. So those don't really count. It's only if you can switch your weapons is the problem, because when you switch your weapon, you're going to switch the ammo value. And when you switch the ammo value, I mean, Hooker the Reaper doesn't know that you're switching the weapon, right? There's no signal that says, hey, we're switching weapons. So all of it sees is the ammo changes. So if the ammo goes up, it says, hey, a reload happened. And if the ammo goes down, it says, hey, a recoil happens. So that's not good, especially when you're switching weapons. So usually that's not really a problem too much, but and this problem is when you switch weapons in these games. So I put in an option for it called ammo check. So when you do ammo check, it makes sure it takes the last ammo minus the new ammo value and makes sure it's a 1. If it's a 1, it says, okay, this is good, do a recoil. So if you switch weapons and it has 20 different, the delta is 20 different bullets or something, it'll kind of just ignore it. Actually, well, it will do a reload, right? If the check fails, it does a reload. And I'll kind of get to the reason why it does that a little bit. So it does last ammo, but if it's a 1, unless you're in slow mode, like I was talking about up here. So if you're in slow mode, then it's 2, because it's going to be, if it's doing the even numbers, or either other, it's always going to be, hey, the ammo is going to be 2. So if you're using slow mode, I got to take that into account too. Okay, so like I said, this is for Time Crisis 5, House of the Dead, Scarlet Dawn. And if you know more games where you switch weapons, let me know so I can get ammo check added to the game file. So the reason why I make it a reload is because if you switch the weapon and it has more ammo, it's going to do a reload. And that's kind of a harder thing to know, because when you do a reload, you can't just check to see if it's 1 or 0. And of course, you can say, hey, you're always reloading to a certain value, but if you're switching weapons, then that gets hard. You have multiple things you reload to, then you have to keep track of. So that's why it's like, well, if we do a reload if it's higher, then we do a reload if it's lower. Well, if it's lower, that's greater than a difference of 1, do a reload. So most of the time, it's always going to do a reload to kind of give you a confirmation that you switched weapons. Unless that one specific time when you switch a weapon and it has 1 less bullet in it. So if that happens, then it's going to do a recoil, and there's really no way around that. But the probability of that is really kind of low, which kind of makes it nice. So when you're playing the game, you're not getting the reload or recoils every time you switch a weapon. Now you just get reloads pretty much 99% of the time, and that 1% of the time you're going to get a recoil. So that's good to know, and a good, easy kind of fix to fix most of it. It's not a full fix, but it fixes most of it. Okay, so now we're getting into the big one, right? Everybody is more probably interested in is adding the Sinden light gun, right? So I got that in. So now I got the. So if you go to I actually got the tutorial up too. So if you go to the tutorial and go set up, I actually have add Sinden light gun in there. I actually have a video on that, how to set it up. Oh, and also, if you go to the default LG documentation and you go to options, I had an example of how to do the ammo check in here. So I got that updated too to say, hey, this is how you do the ammo check. And then so I got the commands updated too. So you have life value, death value, then off-screen left corner and off-screen disabled too. So that's already updated in there already, which is good. So this one uses, Sinden uses TCP server, so you need to use load up Sinden's lightgun.exe program and start up the Recoil server. I think it's in Recoil output. You have to start it up and have the same TCP. So when you get Hook of the Reaper, right? So now if you add the light gun, right? You'll see there's Sinden. You'll see Sinden right there. Then you see another section. I have TCP server down here. Then I have the port, the player, which is 1 and 2, and then you have recoil voltage. Since I don't know the recoil voltage, it doesn't give me that info. It's probably good to, set it where kind of I have a default to it. And you can change, you can override the recoil voltage in certain game files if you want to, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Then you have recoil and reload. Now, as you saw, like the Reaper, you see the ammo value goes to 0, recoil goes to 1, and that goes to 2. And also I changed the other ones now. They all default, like if you go to open fire, it goes 0, 1, 2. Then like I said, if you go to Reaper, it's 1, 0, 2. Then if you go to anything else, except, Reaper and Sinden have that. So, because Sinden seems like more ammo value more. So there's a couple reasons for that, because it's checking for out of ammo, and I do have some things planned more because, I kind of get more in that later, but just showing you how it's set up. Okay, but as you can see, when I did that, the server does have player 1 and player 2, but actually Hook of the Reaper supports 2 TCP servers. So I know you can have multiple Sinden lightgun.exe programs running, and if they have different TCP port numbers, then you can actually get maybe 4 light guns working, and there's some 4-player games. So I didn't want to leave that out. So I did put in support for 2 TCP servers for the output connection. So to support 4 players. Of course, I only have 1 Sinden light gun, so I couldn't test for that. But if anybody does have, 3 or 4 and want to test it, that'd be great. Or even having 2, you can have 2 of them run on 2 different servers to maybe test it out. But I can't really test it out any other way. So hopefully it does work. I did my best to put it in, but there's no really way to test it out. And I did hear back from Sinden saying the rumble should be fine. It should not do any damage to the light gun, so which is good to hear. So I can actually get that out and have that rumble in there, which is pretty cool. It's kind of, when you see it, you're like, okay, but once you actually feel like the rumble, hopefully when people get it and they feel the rumble, it actually feels like, it's kind of weird. It actually feels like a rumble motor until it does at the end where it kind of slams into it and it sounds like a recoil. But when it's kind of in pretty much everything except for the end, it feels just like a shaker motor, which is pretty cool. Actually, it's actually rumbling. So I was happy to find that out. Okay, and also I want to make sure everybody knows this So then this is, a beta, and this is, first iteration of it. So there's going to be bugs. Not everything's going to work, perfect out of the box, right? So if you do have any problems or you notice anything, please tell me and Zenden both so we can get it changed and all that. So just make sure that where the expectation is, it's still new. It's only been out for a little while, right? I just coded stuff in so I could have some bugs in my stuff. And there's bugs, I already found a couple things that I talked to Sinden already. That's why I didn't implement everything I had actually, because finding out there's, a couple problems. I mean, one of them, like I think I talked about, was the recoil voltage kind of sometimes moves around. And this is kind of easily told when I do the reload, because when I do the reload in the send in, it should be light clicks. It should be like, I think 5 or 6 light clicks, like click, 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 like you're putting in bullets or something into the gun, like when you're reloading it. So it's like click, click, click. But sometimes it doesn't do soft little clicks. It will do full like recoil. It'll go click, click, bam, 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 bam. So sometimes the voltage doesn't seem like it's getting set right every time. So every once in a while, especially when you're doing like the lighter clicks, it's probably maybe like 90, maybe 95% of the time it works great. It's just only a few percentages that it doesn't. So like I said, it's still new and figuring out everything, getting everything to work right. But that's kind of like example of things not working like correctly right away. But that's kind of like I was saying, reload, it makes really loud sounds where it should be a lot lighter. Okay. And as I mentioned, I did put an option in to do to override the recoil voltage. So you can change the recoil voltage in that game. So when you load up that default LG, it will override the recoil voltage for all the send and light guns to that voltage. So you can see it's between 0 to 10, so you can put any number in. If you put in 5, for that game, all the send and light guns will be on recoil voltage 5. Then when the game closes, it will reset and go back to what you set it at. So that's kind of a cool thing. And actually, I did have that. If you go to options, here I actually had that too down here. You can see in options, and I show you how to do it. So you go override recoil voltage, and you put a number in from 0 to 10. So that's cool. And also I updated the checks on the default LG. So if you come here to file and you go test default LG game file, so those actually have the checks in it for like ammo check. So if you put like 40 in here, right, it will tell you, go, hey, you can't put 40 in here. It has to be from 0 to 10. So it will check all that too. So so if you do stuff and you want to make sure it'll load up into Hook of the Reaper, you can use this. And then you hit this, then it'll come up to a file selecting, and then you can select what file that you want. Then you can test load the file to make sure everything's good. Okay. Then the last thing probably for Sinden, light gun cannot do kind of like really fast recoil, right? It doesn't have a separate power supply for the Sinden. So really fast recoil, like House of the Dead 4, I had to put it in slow mode. So probably for the people with the Sinden light gun, I definitely will tell you, you want to come here to the Hook of the Reaper site, which is hotr.sixbolt.com. Then over here, you'll see fast recoil games, and you want to select that. And when you get the Hook of the Reaper, you'll have all these default LG game files already. So you just have to go into the default LG directory, and all these files will be there. But to use some of them, they'll have like underscore SM for slow mode. So you'll need to remove that underscore SM from the file name to use the slow mode file. So, but before you do that, here I actually go through 3 different options on how to slow down the recoil. 2 of them are with Hook of the Reaper. So one of them is the slow mode, which I was talking about, which cuts the recoil rate in half. So like House of the Dead 4, you're doing a recoil every 50 milliseconds. You're doing a recoil. But so you do either, when you're doing all the even ones, or either like every second one, that will go down to 100 milliseconds. So now you're doing a recoil every 100 milliseconds, and that works with the Sinden light gun. And that works a lot better. It didn't really like the 50 milliseconds. Then the second option is to use the Rumble 2 solenoid. So there's like a handful of games that you can use that on. And that's usually set, to default to 100 milliseconds. But you can actually change it in the default LG game file. You can change it to percentage. You can use 150. You can change it to 80. So I think you can go down to like 40 milliseconds, the lowest you can go, but you can go all the way up to a second if you want to. But that can change it. So those are slow mode and Rumble to solenoid. If it's available, you can use those to slow down. Then the third one is actually with Demol Shooter, and that's where you change the custom recoil stuff around where you can make it slower. But this whole page kind of talks about how to slow down recoil, which is definitely needed for the Sinden in multiple ways, right? Slow mode works with everything. Like I said, recoil, rumble to solenoids only in a handful of games. Then Demol Shooter, of course, only affects the Demol Shooter games. But here you can see all these are all fast games. So if you're wondering what are fast recoil games, they're here. They're the Beastbusters, Gaia Attacks, Ghostbusters. So they're all here. Then these are the only files you can do the recoil to rumble to solenoid. But like I said, these files are actually included when you download Hook of the Reaper. So, but to use them, like I said, you have to modify them. Like every slow mode has at the end underscore SM. Then I think these have underscore R2S onto them. So you have to modify the file to use to get rid of the fast recoil one and use that one. But this talks about how to do that. So just want to make sure everybody who gets Sinden knows like fast recoil games and how to slow down the recoils here. But yeah, there's a lot of work. So it was a lot of work getting all that in, and I was trying to do some other stuff while I was waiting. But I think I got a lot of stuff in, changed the file. So like I said, it's probably with it, don't expect perfection, but I think it was working really good. So I'm glad Sinden to actually have, to actually work with a hooker kind of engine to see, where it stops the recoil and all that. I know they're making their own and all that, but I know a lot of people are excited for this. So, but hopefully it works out, and I hopefully hear good things. If you have any problems, like I said, let me and Sinden know. But that's it. Thanks. Bye.